You're watching Everything OLED. Make sure to press subscribe to support the channel's growth.
Now I know what you're gonna say. Finally, he has fixed HDR for Windows 10 and 11. And you know what's crazy? I have been working like an absolute asshole to do this and fix it. But you know what? I just figured out a very simple fix actually. I took a screenshot on my PS5 and then I sent that screenshot to essentially the PlayStation app, uploaded it on PC, and then I just checked gamma back and forth in the inputs with the exact same settings. And yeah, Windows 11 and Windows 10 look super washed out in HDR when you're forcing HDR on the SDR layer of Windows. So I needed to correct the gamma so that it looks good in HDR and SDR at the same time, so that you can just set it and forget it. So be in HDR all the time essentially. When you go into HDR, the TV will actually be like insanely washed out. Like you're losing out on, I would reckon, at least 30% of your color gamut reach on your TV. Even if you're boosting color like to 70 and you're using native color gamut, still losing out on a lot of color. And black level detail, because you're gonna be changing the black level down, you know? You're changing maybe down to 30 to make the blacks more darker, to make the midtones look more cohesive and clear. And now it's like, holy shit, it's really, really dark now. I can't see shit anymore. I have people in Reddit talking about like, I'm getting black level crush in this and this game, how do I correct that? And people saying, oh, but you can use reshade. No man, you don't have to use anything anymore, I fixed it. So let's just give you the settings, right? So you go into your PC and you right click on your home screen and you press on display settings in Windows 11 and you'll get to this screen. And now you can enable HDR. So now enable HDR, stay in this screen, hold the menu key on your magic remote, so the TV remote. And what I want you to do is navigate to general. TV is gonna be a little slow here, it seems. There we go. And now I want you to go down to external devices and essentially go HDMI settings and disable HDMI CEC and Dolby Vision PC. If you're gonna be using PS5, Xbox Series S and a PC, so like a console and a PC, leave HDMI CEC enabled. But if you're gonna be only going PC, you can disable both of these. HDR in Dolby Vision PC has a lot of issues. I'm gonna talk about that in the future. But to make this video as easy as possible, let's forget about Dolby Vision for now. It's another video for another time. Make sure that 444 Chroma is on and that the HDMI icon on whichever HDMI you're using for your PC is set to PC mode. Now, great. Let's move to the next step. Now, the next step would be to make sure that it's still saying enabled on screen. You can disable it, and it's gonna go into SDR on the TV, and then you can go back into HDR again, and it should be fine. So, now, you wanna essentially go into HDR by clicking on it, and you wanna enable Auto HDR. This is gonna make sure that it's essentially running an HLG filter on the games, but with correct color accuracy. And it's a little bit more advanced than that, but you can think about it in that way. It's kind of just HLG running on top of games, but inside of HDR layer with corrected gamma, color gamuts. Maybe you can't explain it in that way, but that's how I want you to understand it, because most people that have an LG OLED have played around with HLG, so you kind of know how that looks if you're on console and whatnot. So now, normally when you grab the SDR content brightness slider up all the way, which wouldn't always be correct, but in this case it is, because we've fixed the gamma. So it's correct with HDR and with SDR. Remember that, I have checked this out. This took a week. So believe me on this, test this out, then you can blame me if you think something is wrong. So SDR content brightness, you're gonna max that out. And we're going to be utilizing dynamic tone mapping. You don't have to use dynamic tone mapping. You can just disable it and forget about it. But just know, if you're gonna be using HDR, it's gonna be a little bit more finicky with tampering with in-game settings to make sure that you're not getting any soft roll-off, so that you're getting hard clipping at the point of the panel, so that will be HDR. But for everyone else that's going to be using dynamic tone mapping like myself to make it easier so that you essentially never really have to dial in any settings, a little bit, like, yeah, if you know that your panel is 1000 nits, maybe let's not exceed that value, you know. But outside of that, we don't have to make it more complicated, honestly. Yes, you might lose a little bit of highlight detail depending on what type of game you're running. It is going to be a big problem, honestly. We're not talking about immense like clipping issues. We're not talking about being in SDR and viewing HDR, so everything is clipping like crazy, everything is looking super vibrant. No. We're talking about maybe the clouds have less detail and maybe the sun is not looking as detailed. You know, it's like, who cares? And if you do care, even in dynamic tone mapping, you can just lower the nit slider and you can combat that, and it's not a big deal at all. And you can do that in all games that have HDR. So it's not a big problem. And Auto HDR will talk with the TV with dynamic tone mapping and counteract that either way, because it's going to be mapping for 4,000 nits, so it's not a problem. So now I'm going to be tapping on the HDR here, and I'm just going to make sure that it's like this. You disable both of these. So none of these, you don't want them to be enabled, you want them to be disabled. Okay, now I don't know what to do if you're an AMD user, but if you're a Nvidia GeForce user, you're gonna click on this little button down here, the arrow key, and then right click and then go to Nvidia control panel. Inside of here, we're gonna be here really quick. It's not gonna take long. So you wanna first navigate to change resolution, and you wanna make sure that you are on the PC type resolution. You wanna pick 4K. You wanna change the resolution, the refresh rate to 144 Hertz, 144 Hertz. Yes, that's the peak of LG C4. If you have a G5, you might be having 165 Hertz there. Congrats, you have a little bit more than me, that's cool. Now, you're gonna press apply down in the corner. It's gonna do a handshake, it's gonna become black and come back, and that's totally normal. And now, you're gonna change apply the following settings. Use Nvidia color settings. You're gonna pick highest 32-bit, YCBCR 444, 10-bit, so 10 BPC, sorry, and then limited, and you're gonna make sure that you press apply again. Now, the calibration can begin. So now what I want you to do is navigate to adjust desktop color settings, disable the override to reference mode, and what you want to do essentially is you want to lower the gamma slider to 0.70 and up the contrast slider to 60. So it's going to be brightness 50%, contrast 60%, gamma 0.70. You do not want to touch the digital vibrance slider, because I've noticed in certain scenarios, if you're looking at SDR and you're upping it just by 2 clicks, so 52% on the digital vibrance, you will start to introduce like insane posterization issues. Something is completely wrong when you're in HDR. So this doesn't happen at all if you're just leaving it at 50. I have changed the content type reported to display to games. I don't think it's gonna make that big of a difference, but it might be good to know. Now, some users might be able to change this feature, so I'm gonna show it right now, but no, if you don't have it, it's totally fine. You're gonna go into display settings, you're gonna see HDR, night light mode, and then in between here, there might be a mode for you that's called color profile. Go into that if you can, and you wanna disable this thing right here. The automatically manage colors for apps. If you disable this, you will now be able to get the highest color gamut reach possible. So if, let's say you're playing Star Squadron 2 in HDR, the lightsabers are supposed to be a very specific shade of blue. The same for the enemy's lightsabers, they're supposed to be red. Now, normally when you're playing that game, the lightsabers will have a pinkish kind of tinge. A little bit red maybe, but not that red. Now there will be BT 2020 red like crazy. And vibrant, and the lightsaber will be very blue, like BT 2020 blue like crazy. It will look great. Not crazy in the sense of like boosted, but you get the idea. It will look nice. So that's a good setting to disable. Now, let's move on to the next step. Essentially now, we have corrected the gamma for SDR and HDR, and we have made sure that we can now get the full color gamut reach from the TV, from the PC to the TV. Yes, so we're gonna fix two things. Maybe for some reason you haven't enabled 144Hz on the TV, so you might have to do that. If you're having any other older TV, like an LG CX, C1, C2, C3, you don't have 144Hz, so skip this step, but you can still follow because it will be quick. Just go into the Game Optimizer game bar and be on the game submenu and go down a little bit here, and you will have the 144Hz button there. Enable that, go back into Nvidia control panel settings on resolution, and make sure that you click on 144Hz and then click apply. Make sure that it doesn't change any of the YCBCR stuff as well. It's good. Okay. Now, this is for everyone. LG OLED TVs. This might be true to Samsung's QD OLEDs as well, but I haven't tested it, so be a little wary about this specific information for the Samsung panels. When you disable VRR on your LG OLED TV, the input lag response will be way faster. I don't know if this is a super big difference for the older panels, but for C4 specifically, the one that I have tested, the 42-inch and the 77-inch that I have at home, it's a major improvement. We're talking like it feels like it's 12-13 milliseconds better. I do a lot of latency testing with games. You can have like a latency tester on screen. You can actually measure 12 milliseconds off and on with some settings that you can change. And it's clearly, like when you have a really good mouse, like 8000 Hertz pulling rate mouse, you can really feel the latency very clearly. You can go from 137 FPS to 200, and that FPS difference makes such a difference for latency. And in this case, if you're gonna be competitive, you might consider disabling both VRR modes, because honestly, the latency difference is huge. Okay, so now let's talk about the settings in the Game Optimizer here, and then we can move over to the TV calibration. So in Game Optimizer, I recommend 10, 10, 100, 50, 0, and 50. And of course, dynamic tone mapping enabled. If you're gonna be going HDR, Windows will be extremely boring looking. And it's because it's sending a SDR information to your TV. So this will be like 100 nit peak or 50 nit peak or whatever it will be. I'm not really sure. Actually, I haven't researched that before I did the video, so it doesn't really matter. You just know you're looking at HDR colors, but SDR brightness. There's no way to fix that. It is what it is. So dynamic tone mapping is what I recommend, and it's also what I'm gonna be using from now on, because I fixed the gamma, so it looks fucking awesome, honestly. So now I'm gonna tap on the menu remote button one more time so that I get to this picture, and we're gonna go into all settings. Now we're gonna go here and we're gonna make sure it's highlighted on HDR select mode, and we're gonna type 111.3.111. Oh, bruh. 111.3.111. Now, inside of here, make sure that everything is set to auto. If you are a little bit of a crackhead, then you change anything inside of here so that it doesn't correlate with what I have on screen. So auto V2. Right? You will get one major issue. Every single time the TV does a handshake, it might do like a full handshake and then a half handshake and then get confused. If that happens, there's a, I would say, 10% chance or a risk of the panel doing a, what is it called in English now? A dropout. So it would essentially just shut off the power of the power supply inside of the TV. The image would become black. And the only way to get the TV to work again is to unplug the power cord to the TV, wait a few seconds, unplug it in, turn it on, and the image is back. So, to not damage the panel, I don't think it would damage the panel from a dropout, but still, don't change these settings, it's not worth it, man. You want stability, ease of use. And all of the stuff that you can change in there is pretty much unnecessary, honestly, after this calibration either way, so yeah. Now, brightness, I have 70 on OLED pixel brightness, but you can go whatever you want here. If you want to dial it down because it's too bright, do that. If you want it to be brighter, do that. It's totally up to you. This won't change the calibration, it just changes how bright, you know, the screen is. So yeah. Dynamic tone mapping, expression enhancer disabled because it messes with mid-tone luminance like crazy and just washes out mid-tones. And I don't like how it looks. It is washes out colors as well a little bit, desaturates them in some cases anyways, and I don't like it. So video range limited because we're doing limited. That will also fix major issues near black in certain games where you might get black hole crush, and some posterization issues will now be fixed if you do limited instead of full, because these TVs are not made to do full, so it won't look correct. So that's what we have there. And now color, and we're gonna do color gamut native to make sure that the panel is able to reach those BT2020 colors even in the first place. If we pick auto detect, it might be slightly more accurate, but it will never be able to reach those real, like, you know, the peak of the color gamut reach of the TV's capabilities. So if you really want those colors, I recommend it on native, honestly. So now calibrating the white balance. You maybe looked at me instead of the TV. You're gonna go white balance, and then you're gonna do warm 50. You're gonna go 2-point method. You're gonna begin with high point, and you're gonna go +10, +7, +23. Now you're gonna change high point to low point instead. You're gonna go -9, -7, -5. Now I can explain what this does extremely quickly, then let's move on. So low point in 2-point method is essentially everything that is below 40% on the grayscale. It has to do with colors as well, but you can kind of think about it in that way. And now, high point is essentially 60% and up on the grayscale. You get it, right? So we're changing the brighter shades and we're changing the darker shades, depending on low and high point. Now, if we want to be a little bit more finicky and precise, we want to change 22-point code value. And that I can't explain, because it kind of is changing shading around the panel like so, and I don't know how to explain it any more than that. You can ask AI and it might be able to answer that to you, but I can't put that into words right now, and I don't think it would help anyone either. So let's just move on. Now, if you want to make a really precise calibration, to really map your TV to make it as good as possible, a 22-point calibration is very, very preferable. So, now, if you don't have any calibration gear at home, you can follow this step. But if you have calibration gear at home, I recommend that you change these values on your own, actually. But if you don't have any calibration at home, any gear at home, so like a calorimeter or any software to calibrate, I recommend that you follow this step. So, you're gonna go 22-point code value. You're gonna click on code value, go all the way down to the bottom. And what works best for my panel, and I've seen several comments, like we're talking around, it must be 1,000 comments at this point, but at least I know it's above 300 comments saying that these settings look insanely good. And I've even seen people that have tracked and looked at the color measurements on their TVs, and the white balance is actually looking correct even on their TV. It maybe leaned a little bit more in green, and some people's panels leaned a little bit more in magenta, but we're talking about such a small difference that the delta E was almost perfect. And it's cool because you can just copy and paste and it's totally for free in a video. So you're gonna go on the code value, go to the lowest point, and what you wanna go is essentially just do -10 on blue, -2 on green. Go up one step on the code value, do -10 on blue, -8 on green, pause if I'm going too fast. We're gonna go up one more step, -10 on blue, -12 on green, -10, -14, -2, and we're gonna go up one more last step here. The last one will be 342, at least on the 55 inches and above panels. It might be different depending on your model name. So if you have like a C5 instead of a C4, it might be different with the number, but just know we're still changing the increments from 1 up to 5, from the bottom being 1. On that my panel it was 100 and something. I'll check it in a second. But now the last one will be -10, -15. So we go down all the way. On my panel it's 101. On your panel it might be 89, I think is the lowest on the lower TVs. You get the idea. it will still do the exact same thing. It's just a number difference. So don't take, don't get it twisted. It's still the same thing. So 101, 169, 126, 270, 342. Those are the only code values that we changed it to the 2-point code value. We make sure again that it's warm 50 on color temperature, and you know what, guys? We're done. You've now calibrated windows, colors, color gamut reach, and you made sure that everything looks cohesive and nice. It's nighttime right now, so I'm gonna enable level 2 on blue light. And remember, if you want to use VRR, it's totally fine, but I don't necessarily recommend it because the latency difference is huge. It's still very good with it enabled, but it becomes competitive with it disabled. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and you know what? I will catch you in the next one, and please let me know if you think this looks a lot better, because I know a lot of people have been having insane issues on Reddit. We talked about this before, but on Reddit, insane. Like, I think everyone has been having problems with HDR in Windows 11, and here I am. It took me 1 week to fix issues that people have been having for, I think it's 5 years almost now. So yeah, to me. And it's free, so you can't really complain that much, can you? Okay, well, I'm gonna go away now and go to sleep soon, because it's like 2 a.m. in the middle of the night. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe and leave a like and a comment. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.